This is a non-computational, more conceptual question about the meaning of the sign chart and solutions to inequalities. In this problem, we're trying to identify which of these multiple options given on the right are solutions to the question about the values of x for which f of x is greater than or equal to 0. The missing piece here is the actual sign chart itself. So I'm going to start off by, from the picture, reconstructing the sign chart, if I can use my computer correctly. So down here, I'm going to construct the sign chart for this function f of x, and I'm going to try to keep it lined up. That'll make it easier. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is a number line representing the x-axis, and I'm going to label right above that line whether my y-coordinates, my f of x values, are positive or negative. And I can do that analysis on the graph here, because I can look at the points on the graph and see that those y-coordinates are positive, because positive y-coordinates sit above the x-axis. So my y-coordinates are positive on all of those parts of the curve, and my y-coordinates are negative when you get down here to this part of the curve, because that's below the x-axis, and my y-coordinates are 0 at those 2 points on the curve. So on my sign chart, obviously 1 and 4 are the kind of key points there. That's where the outputs, the y-coordinates are 0. And then in between those two zeros of this function, I'll have negative y values, and everywhere else I have positive y values. So remember, the y-coordinate on the graph corresponds to the output of the function. So it's pretty easy from a picture of a graph to reconstruct the sign chart for that graph. In other problems, we've been doing it the other way around, and that took a little bit more work. In this case, we can just pull the information down. So now let's look at the question, the inequality whose solution is supposedly shown. It would be all the x's for which f of x is greater than or equal to 0. So all of the x's for which the outputs are 0 or positive. So greater than or equal to 0 means 0 or a plus sign on my sign chart. So I can see that for all these values of x, I have plus signs above them. For all of these values of x, I have plus signs above them. And then for those two values here, I have 0 above that. So I would include those points as being shaded. So I have shading on the numbers 1 and 4, and then I have the shading going out to the left and out to the right. So that's I've shaded all the places where the f of x, the outputs, are pluses or 0. Everything is shaded yellow if it was a plus or a 0. And so the question is multiple choice now. That should look like one of these pictures, and other than the choice of color that I used, it's easy to identify that it corresponds to this one. That what I've shaded on the bottom left is exactly what's shaded in the fifth one down. It's worth noting here that if instead of asking for this answer to be in terms of a shaded number line, it had asked for interval notation, that's a very small difference from the shaded picture that I have for my shaded sign chart. I can easily turn this into interval notation because the shading represents everything from minus infinity up to 1, and I would put a square bracket around the 1, square brace, to denote that 1 is included. So the same way I shade in the dot above 1, I would use a square brace above 1. And then I'll have a union symbol, and I'll have a square brace with the 4 going out to infinity. So interval notation, that's a weird way to write it, isn't it, with it way out there? Interval notation is meant to reflect this sort of visual reality of the number line. The order of the terms corresponds exactly to the left to the right order of our number line, and we have this convention of square braces corresponding to closed filled dots, and if it had been an open dot there, I would have used the round parentheses. But I can answer either kind of question from the sign chart. I can either shade it and find the one that matches the shading, or I can convert that picture into interval notation and then just find the intervals over here that answer the question. So regardless of whether the answer here is supposed to be a number line or interval notation, I can figure either one out from the sign chart that I've created.